Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wano guide, as today we're gonna cover the Army General mode. And we're gonna go over what the Army General mode is in general and what the scale of it and the setting of it is. And then we're gonna cover the basics of how to play the Army General mode, what all these numbers on the screen right mean, all the symbols. And then we're gonna go into some small tips and tricks at the end. So yeah, timestamps for all of that down below as well. And if you have any further questions, leave them down below in the comment section. I'm pretty sure me or other community members will be able to answer them. So let's get right into it. So what is Army General? Army General is the grand campaign mode in Wano. There are 5 of these campaigns in the base game and 2 more in each of the big expansions, Norfolk and Southwark, with Southwark still to come. This is the one that we are knowing about, potentially more to come afterwards. And in these, you play on a limited timescale of a couple of days within the fictional Cold War gone hot scenario of the Wano timeline. And it always focuses on one part of the front line. In this case here, from the Norfolk DLC, it is around the city of Hanover up to the city of Wolfsburg. All of them currently are located within West Germany. And you command either the Soviet or the NATO side. Both can be played in each of the campaigns. The campaigns can also be played in multiplayer, either 3 versus the as co-op or 2v2 or 1v1 multiplayer. So you can play this with your friends as well. And I highly recommend it. There will be some 2v2 action here on the channel in the near future as well, where we're gonna play these. So if you want to see those, consider subscribing down below so you don't miss that. And in these, you control on the strategic campaign map all these formations. And Army General fuses the tactical gameplay of Wano battles with a persistent campaign map here, where you bring the units into the right spot, and then once units meet on the battlefield, you can set up a battle and either auto-resolve them or play them out on a map. And damage that you take in the battles is persistent. Units don't regenerate, as the timescale of a couple of days for each campaign doesn't allow for real reinforcements to individual units. You will get some reinforcing formations within each campaign, but those don't replenish their forces between battles. So every unit you lose in a battle is lost on the campaign map as well. And that is really the intriguing part of this, with constant attrition throughout this, and every single tank that you destroy counting, and every tank you lose as well. And you have obviously a lot of different formations, from tanks over artillery and aircraft that you have around as well. So it really is a nice combined arms with all the different nations involved in it as well. So let's get how to play this and what all these numbers mean. We start with the different formations that you can have in this, as you can have combat battalions. Those are your mechanized motorized infantry or your tank battalions. You can have support or auxiliary battalions. Those are your pioneers, your helicopters, your security forces that are just there as small helping formations. And those have an extra slot. They can't start engagements on their own. Only combat units can start engagements, but auxiliary forces can help out on the defense or in aggressive moves with combat battalions. So, for example, a recon battalion can be put into a slot. We will get to that in a second. Then we have artillery, which can help out from further away. The circle here indicating where it can help. And then the last unit type are the aircraft that you can call in across the battlefield into battles, but only once in each turn cycle. Turn cycle means your turn and the enemy turn. All units replenish their action points at the beginning of your turn. Most units start with 12 points into each turn, and it usually costs you 1 or 2 points to move through a hex, depending on what kind of hex it is. And you need 4 points to get into a battle with a formation. So if you have a standing still formation, it could get into 3 battles within 1 turn. If you move it up to down to 8 points, it can get involved into 2 battles in that turn. So that is a pretty important thing to remember. And if you attack in your turn and it goes to 0 in your turn, that formation can't help out other formations on the defense anymore. So that is how the action points work. And terrain affects how you move through the different areas. Roads make it cheaper, and forests make it harder. There are also 4 different sorts of terrain. There is the normal plain, the open field. If you hover over a hex, it indicates that with the shield symbol, and also if you hover over it for a while longer without the unit controlled, it will show up there. And then you have plain. You have forest, which is pretty obvious as well where those are, which is the dark green shield. And then you have semi-urban, which are the smaller little villages, and urban, which are the bigger urban centers. And those also give a bit of a defensive bonus when you are defending on urban hexes or forest hexes in Autoresolve, and obviously they also impact what kind of map you can get in the skirmish battles, with the map being always randomized out of a pool for each type. So plain maps usually will be maps with less cover and more open fields. Forest maps obviously will have a lot of trees on them. Semi-urbans will have some small villages, and urban will be mostly building areas where you can get into city fighting. And it's also really important that you set your right units into the right spot. And it really, especially for the defender, can be really impactful in what hex you get attacked in to allow your defense to work out better. So yeah, those are the basics about movement and how to use it. So it also gets indicated here with the light blue. Whenever you stay in the light blue, you still can use a unit for attack. If you go into the dark blue, it doesn't have anything left in this turn to attack or defend other units with. So yeah, for artillery it works a bit different. They only get 5 points, but their 5 points can move a bit further, though it means that they only can move a really short bit and still give fire support in that turn. But that's the only unit that has a bit of a different way of moving in this. And that brings us to the battles and to the auto-resolve system. And the auto-resolve system on the front side is pretty easy. You have 2 numbers on your units. The left side number is the attack value, right side number is defense value. The units involved in the battle, if we bring these guys here around, are always adding up. So you can always bring in 2 combat battalions, 1 auxiliary battalion if close by, and then 1 artillery and 1 air unit into each battle. So let's, for example, go with the Panzer battalions here. We don't have an auxiliary unit close enough. This one is a bit too far away. We can bring in the artillery from over here. And then we could bring in an aircraft. And then it counts against the defensive value that the enemy has around. And we can auto-resolve. Enemy brings in planes as well. And then all of this gets auto-resolved. And units take losses. And there, the game is pretty easy as well. And as it calculates the forces multiplier, the force ratio between yours, 22 is 1.7 times 13. And it just takes -1 on both sides then. So the result is a plus 0.7 for our side. And that means it's a minor victory. Everything between 0.5 and 1 is a minor victory. Everything between 1 and 1.5 is a major victory, and everything above 1.5 is a total victory, and everything below 0.5 is a draw, and if it's a minus, it's a minor defeat, major defeat, total defeat. And that also gives you the percentage of losses that you take. So in a minor victory, we take 15% of our units as losses. The Soviet sides take 25% of the units as losses. So out of our 170 units involved, each tank counting 1, each infantry battalion counting as 1, and so on, we lose 26. Out of their 61, they lose 25, and then that is randomized in where the losses are. So we lose 16 infantry and 5 tanks. They lose 11 tanks, and this was a pretty good tank formation, so that's pretty impactful. They lose 5 out of the 15 planes. We lose 3 out of our 9, and so on. And that's the basic. There is a slight random effect where there's a defender or attacker getting lucky part, but it's really, really minor. It's only 0.2 difference. So usually, if the prediction tells you will get a major victory, you at maximum can go one or down or up. Like, you can't go from a major victory to a draw. You could go from a major victory to a minor victory or a total victory, though, with the luck involved. And then there are a couple more modifiers. So one of them you can see here on this Panzer Battalion, for example. The crossed out infantry section means this formation doesn't have any infantry inside of it anymore. So when it gets into a battle and there are no other infantry formations around that can help out, it will get a malice that is minus 0.5 for not having infantry, meaning combined arms is not given. Artillery obviously always has this. A lot of helicopter formations have this, so being attacked with an artillery formation on its own doesn't feel great. Then there's another malice, which we don't have here yet, which can occur pretty easily if you're a bit reckless with your forces as well, though. And that happens when you don't have any leader units in your formation anymore. And then you have a similar symbol with a crossed out star, and the malice is the same. It's an 0.5 at the end, so it really is a big malice as well. And then there are two modifiers that help you out, and those are if you have air superiority, that meaning that you called in an air unit and the enemy couldn't get an air unit into the battle, you get an plus 0.5. And then the other one is if you have heavy tanks. Heavy tanks are tanks that cost you 4 points, and if you know your tanks, it's T-64s and T-80Bs on, and BVs and UDs on Pact side, and on NATO side, it's your Challengers, your Leopard 2s, your Abrams, and so on. So those, if you have those in battle and the enemy doesn't have any heavy tanks, that gives you, and no super modern MBTs, those give you a 0.5 advantage as well. So to show that heavy tanks have a big impact and modern MBTs have a really big impact on 1980s battlefields as well, and they can turn the numbers a bit as well. And you always want to have some around, especially if you're on the attack and the enemy has some as well. Otherwise, they will get a strong modifier there. So those are the 4 special modifiers outside of terrain that gives it small defender advantage if it's forest or urban area. So yeah, it's a pretty simple system, as you only have to do additive and subtractive number games here, and then you can see the modifier, simple multiplications, and that goes pretty easily into all of this. Obviously, if you want to fight the battles, all the auto-resolve results, if they don't go your way, or you think you can do better than that auto-resolve result, you can also go into battle. You can always let the map be displayed before you go in to decide if you want to fight the battle there, and if that map fits you. It's usually slightly in favor of the defender, like the defender usually gets a +3 zone in their favor and is a bit faster to one of the +2 zones, so that the attacker is always a bit on the tick, and we will jump into that in a second. Before that, I want to talk a bit more about all the other indicators here on the map. One of them is this number here, next to combat battalion, that says 88%. And that's the whole strength of this formation. And it's really important because formations can't fight until they are at 0, as that's not really accurate. Formation, similar to historical or like in general military terms, is combat inefficient and combat incapable at 33% strength. If the losses are 2/3 and 2/3 of the forces have been taken out, then the formation will disappear from the map because it's deemed not capable of combat anymore. So that's the forces that you have to destroy. And then another thing that you can see here now, these units have fought, and they have now fatigue on their points as well. And fatigue is a pretty important thing to keep in mind as well. Is if it reaches 8, your unit will become combat inefficient as well. And that means it will still be on the battlefield, but it can't defend itself. It doesn't have the supplies anymore. It doesn't have the ammunition to fight back anymore, and the soldiers themselves are not ready for combat anymore because they have been fighting on for so long. Their morale has been attritioned away, and so on. So that's what this symbolizes. And if it's at 8, the formation can't defend itself anymore. You gain fatigue by any sort of battle, and it always gets you 2 as an attacker, no matter if you win or lose. And it always gets you at least 1 as a defender, no matter if you win or lose. And then it adds up 2 to 4, depending on how big the loss was. So for a minor loss here, they got 1 plus 2. So 3 fatigue here for the defender. We as an attacker got 2. If we would have taken a minor loss here, we would have gotten 4 fatigue here, and they would be at 1. And if we would have gotten a major victory, they would be now at 5, and the maximum we could have taken would have been 6 as an attacker. So really, fatigue can be pretty important, especially if you fight multiple actions in a row. It only goes down by 1 point each turn, so you really should keep an eye on it, as if the unit gets fully out-fatigued, it can't defend itself anymore, and it needs other units next to it to defend it. Otherwise, if it gets attacked and no one can help them, they just get wiped out completely in that move as well, no matter how much combat strength they still have left. So even 88% formation like this, if it would be at 8 fatigue and would be attacked without any units helping it out, it would get wiped out. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind as well. And then, yeah, another thing that is pretty important is anti-air. Anti-air is the only really special unit on the campaign map, as it can set up to deploy. And if you set that up to deploy, it shoots at any plane coming into the circle. The circle can be different size for different AA pieces, depending on how long their realistic range is in real life. And those AA battalions are really important to keep the front line close to enemy air defense, as whenever an airplane flies into this to get to a battle, they will have to get a check, and most plane types will lose that check. They only have a small chance of getting lucky and getting through the air defense. So sometimes it still might be worth it to try to risk that if you really need the Air Force to win a battle. But usually most aircraft types lose against it. Only seat planes can beat them in the calculation that then comes. It's always an auto-resolve, and the AA is calculated really strong, and only seat is able, which is standing for suppression of enemy air defense, and focused on dealing with air defense, can beat them. So yeah, AA stays up the whole turn until it has been beaten once. So once an enemy air force won the auto-resolve against it, they are beaten, meaning that whenever you know about enemy air defense being around, you always want to use a seed plane first to get into that circle to destroy it. Afterwards, once the AA is beaten, you can use your other planes for battles in that area. But first, in the first battle in an area, you usually want to use your seed plane. They are not always around, like here in this battle. For example, we have HE over here and more cluster over here, and that is an issue because none of these planes here currently bring us seed. So we currently in this scenario couldn't deal with enemy air defense. We can only use aircraft in battles where the enemy doesn't have any around. So that really can differentiate between different campaigns. The bigger ones usually having some seaplanes around, but also having more AA, and the smaller ones usually not having seat, but also having fewer AA pieces on both sides, so that bringing in aircraft against overextending forces or on some flanks can be possible. And that gets us to how to actually win these campaigns. And there are usually different objectives for each of them. In this one, for example, it's about Hanover for the major victory for both sides. If NATO holds, gets extra points and so on. But there are also victory points involved. And victory points are shown up here. That's the campaign score. And they are given first and foremost, for the objectives on the side listed up here, and they are given at the end for holding here on the left. So if we hold at the end of the campaign Hanover, we get 20 points. And then here per turn, for each turn we hold any of these positions on the map that have a flag over them, we get +1 point there as well for each turn. So currently NATO has all of them in this campaign, but a lot of them are close to the front line, so the Pact will get over them and then collect points as well. And then the other bit that you get points for is destroying enemy formations. And there's a bit of a difference between NATO and Pact, because NATO only gets 1 point for each Pact formation they destroy, and Pact gets 2 points for each NATO formation they destroy. A bit to balance out that NATO tank formations and so on are a bit larger, a bit bigger than the average Pact formation, and also to indicate that Pact just has a lot more formations running around than NATO, so NATO has to destroy more to actually gain a victory, and Pact can take losses a bit easier in most of these campaigns. And then the last thing that we have to talk about are the battles when you decide to play them. So let's jump into one here, where we add a couple of aircraft, and then we go to the tactical map battle. We are on a pretty open hex here, so there we go. First, you have to decide in single player if you want to take all the units or if you want to give some to the AI. And you can also move units around here on the bottom, so you don't have to give them exactly that battalion. You can just say, okay, I want the AI to take control over this headquarter unit and some chieftains, and I take still some chieftains into this infantry formation because the AI is not good with infantry, but I also still want to have some tanks. And then you can also decide of how many of the starting points and how many points per minute the AI should get. So yeah, just slide this around, and in 2v2 this would be replaced with the AI would be replaced with your team member, and you can switch this around here if you play with 2 players and give each other the points and move the units around. So yeah, that's the start, and then you can just click tactical battle and get onto the map. So yeah, the AI will deploy its units now. We got our aircraft in here, so we have some tornadoes available. You see what the enemy units have gotten in here. This here, for example, indicates that they have some aircraft in this as well. They have some artillery, Guards Tank Corps, 2 Tank Corps formation, and yeah, we have to win this battle. And to win the battle, you either have to reach a score of 2,500 victory points with these capture points, and the other way to win is bringing the enemy team morale down. Morale is based on the max morale. Each battle is based on how many formations for each side are in and in which state they are in. So as these are pretty healthy formations on both sides, the morale on both sides is pretty high, 228 and 240 on each side. And that means we can also win by killing off 240 points worth of units on the other side. The points are indicated here on the top right. The cost of the units is also their worth in morale. So, for example, these infantry units here, if they get destroyed, the enemy takes away 1 of our morale points. And on the other side, if they beat one of the tank formations that we got ourselves, these tanks, for example, here, if we have a look on them, they're worth 4 points. So losing chieftains can lose you the morale quite quickly, and going for enemy ground units here can be pretty worthwhile. And if you kill enemy units, it also shows you how many points they were worth with an indicator above them. So yeah, those are the basics of the game, and it is really quite easy to get into, and the system really is well chosen by Eugen for the simplicity, I think, for mixing a wargame system, all these different formations around, and then just matching it with easy number calculations that most people can easily do in their head, but then setting it also up that you can fight those battles. And the persistency of this campaign really is what makes it so intriguing. And yeah, when it comes to tips, I already said the one with seaplanes. Always start your first battle with seaplanes if you have them available, and don't risk them in the battle necessarily, but get them around just to destroy the enemy air defenses and keep them down. And yeah, really don't risk the seed planes in the battle then, because if you lose them there, they also don't do the job on the battlefield anymore. Even if the plane formation might still be around, if you lose the seed planes in they won't function as seed formation anymore. So that is calculated by the game as well. The second thing is that you can encircle enemy units, as you see this frontline system that a lot of you might know from Steel Division, and yeah, it's also what is in the zones in Wano. And if you cut the enemy off, they are shown as encircled, and that means they don't have the fuel and the ammunition anymore to do aggressive actions anymore. So if you cut them off, they can't attack you anymore, and they also can't capture points because only points that are within the zone count as captured. So if they are behind your lines in Xanadu, for example, and you are able to encircle them, you will be able to get them encircled, and then they will not be able to do any aggressive actions anymore. So you can ignore them until they reach defensive lines again. You can also then defeat them, as they don't recover fatigue there anymore by attritioning them away a lot easier. So that can be pretty helpful. And then another tip is that you really only want to do aggressive actions if you know that you can destroy the enemy, or if you don't know that, only do them in the next turn, so that you still have, after an action like here, points left to help out each other on the defense. Otherwise, you leave individual units without support, and individual units can usually be picked off quite easily. Like, you always want to have combined arms, as the calculations in the Autoresolve especially are pretty brutal, but even on a single battle, like a Panzer Grenadier formation on its own is really not that great, as it doesn't have the combined arms. Panzer Grenadier Battalion plus, for example, a Leo 1A5 Battalion, those together work really nicely. So you usually want to get combined arms together and get good numbers. And then the last thing is that Autoresolve can be really good, especially if you have those very major victories coming up. Like, just take them. You most likely won't get better results in battles, as the morale system doesn't even allow you sometimes to destroy that many units in the battles themselves, and only taking 3% of casualties is really impressive for the Autoresolve result. Unless you're a really high level player, you're most likely not going to be able to match that. Plus, the battles where you would get a major victory often aren't the most fun ones anyway, so just take that and fight the ones where it is either stacked against you or you're in an even battle. Those are the more fun ones as well. Autoresolve really allows you to get through the campaigns and to the fun battles easier, and you should take that if it comes up.